but that would deny the faith. Christ said that if anyone removed even one word of Scripture from the Bible, even if it is considered homophobic or anti-Semitic, Christ would remove that person's name from his book of life. To no longer teach from or emphasize certain scriptures because they are controversial is to cut out these parts of the Bible as effectively as if scissors were actually taken to them. In the same way, if anyone is ashamed of publicly reading and teaching from any of the words of Jesus, Christ said he would be ashamed of that person in the day of judgment. It is obvious that Canadian Christians must now make up their minds whom they are going to obey. Canadian hate laws make it increasingly clear that it is now either God or the government. The chill from the north wind blowing through British Columbia today is mild compared to the chill on free speech that has settled on this beautiful province. Even now, preaching and witnessing, or proselytizing as it is called, is increasingly viewed by Canadian society as judgmental and intolerant. Ultimately, church organizations in Canada that allow such so-called intolerance may be declared illegal. Then all persons who are members of such illegal churches will be subject to persecution. If they persist in gathering together, they will be found in contempt of court, and imprisonment will follow. Eventually, the only fellowship Christians in Canada can enjoy may be tapping in code through their prison walls. As we near the conclusion of this video, we should remember that the ADL does not represent American ideals or have the best interests of the American or Canadian people at heart. If it did, pornographer Hugh Hefner would not have received the ADL's Freedom of the Press Award. The ADL is the unregistered, illegal representative of the interests and ambitions of a foreign power, Israel. ADL control, as Congressman Rarick testified, is greater than any federal agency. Political leaders do not hesitate to criticize the FBI and CIA if necessary, but no elected representative except Rarick has ever had the courage to expose the Jewish ADL before Congress. If they do so, they know the ADL will smear them as anti-Semitic and ruin their careers. Such power to silence all criticism is the very definition of absolute power. It is proof that the ADL's power is greater than the government's. Consequently, it is in vain to hope for any governmental restraint upon ADL power. Instead, it is up to each one of us to be suspicious of ADL propaganda and voice our objections to our elected representatives.
From what we have seen in this video, it should be clear that the secret purpose of the ADL is very different from what it conveys to an unsuspecting public. The ADL has not spied on Christians and Americans for 3/4 of a century in order to create a more tolerant world. Rather, the thousands of Americans who fill ADL files are persons the ADL wants eventually to criminalize. Communist revolutionaries such as Lenin, Mao Zedong, and Fidel Castro all gathered extensive lists of their political opponents long before they seized power. When power finally came, they used these lists to kill or imprison all opposition.
Yes, violent hate crimes do exist and should be vigorously prosecuted, especially at the state level. Yet contrary to ADL propaganda, violent crimes motivated by bias are relatively rare compared to violent crimes in general. The fact is, elimination of crimes of bias is not the ultimate purpose of the so-called anti-hate legislation now before Congress. Rather, as in Canada, this legislation intends to eventually create federal protection of certain special interest groups.
Now is the time to protest the next round of anti-hate legislation which the ADL, even now, is bringing before Congress. Inform your senators and congressmen that existing laws adequately criminalize all forms of slander and violence. Anti-hate legislation could provide the foundation for a system of police state spying and censorship. If the ADL requests are followed, it would ultimately allow Big Brother to determine which ideas are legal and which are not. Such probing into the motivational mindset of Americans is a very dangerous and far-reaching precedent. Once Congress gives the Justice Department, the FBI, and the ADL the right to criminalize our thoughts and words, our freedom will be over.
Because anti-hate laws are such an imminent threat to freedom, and because few Christians even know of the ADL, the National Prayer Network has prepared vital tools to inform you and your friends. The first is the video you have just watched, Hate Laws, Making Criminals of Christians. The second is Ted's 345-page book on the story of the Jews, past, present, and future, Israel, Our Duty, Our Dilemma. Distilling 15 years' research in little-known Jewish sources, Ted comes to much more biblical and realistic conclusions concerning present-day Israel than are commonly held in the church today. Finally, Ted's gripping one-hour video, The Other Israel, is the television version of his book. Fast-moving, yet thoroughly documented, The Other Israel discusses the extent of Jewish power and what should be the Christian's response to it. Hate Laws, Making Criminals of Christians is $24.90 post-paid. Israel, Our Duty, Our Dilemma is $15.95 post-paid. The Other Israel video is $22.95 post-paid. Canadian orders should be in U.S. funds with an additional $2.50 postage included for each item. Or buy all three for $55 post-paid, $60 in Canada. Order from National Prayer Network, P.O. Box 828, Clackamas, Oregon, 97015. Also, please visit our website at www.truthtellers.org.